Have you ever felt a shiver of destiny brush against your skin, a whisper that promises a story far beyond the everyday? 5 seconds. That's all it takes. Rain, a relentless curtain, cascaded upon Maple Avenue. Each drop a mournful echo on the pristine lawns of silent, elegant homes. Sarah Bennett, a woman etched with the quiet strength of 48 years, stood frozen, rainwater mingling with the tears tracing paths down her cheeks. Her hands, a protective shield, rested on the shoulders of Emma and Oliver, twins barely 10, their faces mirrors of bewilderment and a grief too profound for their young hearts to grasp. Movers, faceless figures in this unfolding tragedy, wrestled cardboard boxes from the Victorian house, loading them onto a waiting truck, a vessel of shattered memories. Overseeing the scene was a woman in her 60s, regal and untouched by the storm, her expensive clothes a stark contrast to the raw emotion hanging in the air. Her face, a mask of unwavering resolve, spoke of decisions obeyed without question. Where are you listening from today, friend? Come closer and listen to a tale spun from love, loss, and the quiet healing power of community. 6 weeks. A mere 6 weeks had passed since David's funeral. 6 weeks for Victoria Harrison to begin evicting her son's widow and grandchildren. 6 weeks of grief, raw and agonizing, before Sarah found herself standing in the downpour, watching strangers dismantle the life she had built with her beloved husband. You never truly belonged here anyway. Victoria's voice cut through the rain, each word a precisely aimed stone. Sarah tightened her grip on her children's shoulders. Emma trembled, while Oliver stood rigid, his small jaw clenched in a way that echoed his father's so painfully. Sarah's heart clenched. This house belongs to the Harrison family trust. Victoria continued, her approach measured and cold. You lived here through our generosity, which unfortunately has reached its limit. 15 years before, Sarah, a history teacher with a soul captivated by Renaissance art, had met David Harrison at the Metropolitan Museum. He stood before a lesser-known Caravaggio, sketching with intense focus, oblivious to her presence. When he finally looked up, his green eyes held a warmth that dissolved her carefully prepared opening line. You see it, too, don't you? He had asked. The light fighting against the darkness. David came from wealth, an old money that had shaped the city for generations. The Harrison Real Estate Group owned half the commercial properties downtown. Sarah came from teachers and nurses, people who measured wealth in kindness and compassion, not square footage. Victoria and Richard Harrison made their disapproval clear from their first meeting, treating Sarah with the polite disdain reserved for temporary inconveniences. Teaching is admirable, Victoria had said over dinner in their mansion, the pregnant pause before admirable speaking volumes. They married anyway. David chose Sarah over his parents' approval, and for years, they thrived in the house on Maple Avenue. Emma and Oliver arrived, bringing with them the chaotic joy of childhood. David painted while Sarah taught, and they built a life rich in love, if modest in luxury. Then, the storm clouds gathered. David was diagnosed with brain cancer at 45, the tumor already aggressive. Promise me something, he had whispered one night, his once strong hand frail against her cheek. Promise you'll remember that you're enough exactly as you are. Promise you'll teach our children that a person's worth isn't measured by their bank account. Sarah had promised, though she hadn't understood the urgency behind his words. Now, standing in the rain with nowhere to go, that promise felt like her only possession. Victoria's voice sliced through her memories. We've made arrangements for Emma and Oliver to stay with us at the estate. You'll have time to figure out your situation. No. The word erupted from Sarah, surprising even herself. We stay together. That's not negotiable. Don't be ridiculous, Sarah, Victoria sighed. You can't possibly provide for them on a teacher's salary. Think about what's best for the children. I am what's best for them, Sarah replied, her voice steadying. I'm their mother. Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. Our attorneys may have different thoughts on that matter. Before Sarah could respond, a taxi pulled up to the curb. An elderly Asian woman emerged, her silver hair cut in a practical bob, her movements purposeful despite her 70 years. Perfect timing as always, Ella Lehner, Sarah said, relief washing through her. Professor Ella Lehner had been Sarah's mentor at the university, a surrogate mother who had always believed in Sarah's potential. The moving truck is following my instructions, Ella Laner said, ignoring Victoria completely. I've made arrangements. As they prepared to leave, Sarah noticed Oliver slip back toward the house. He returned moments later, clutching a worn leather journal. Dad's notebook, he whispered. I couldn't leave it. In the taxi, Ella Laner handed Sarah a small envelope. Inside was a key and an address in the Oakwood neighborhood. David came to see me 2 months before he passed, Ella Laner explained. He asked me to give you this when certain circumstances arose. He knew this would happen, Sarah's voice cracked. He knew his parents, Ella Laner replied simply. And he knew you'd need a contingency plan. Emma, who had been silent since they left the house, suddenly spoke. Did Daddy leave us because of something I did? Sarah gathered her daughter close, inhaling the familiar scent of strawberry shampoo. No, sweetheart. Your father loved us more than anything in the world. Sometimes, people we love have to leave, even when they want to stay more than anything. As the taxi wound through the city toward an uncertain future, Sarah wondered if she had enough strength to rebuild from nothing. David had believed she did. She would have to trust him one last time. The house on Oakwood Street stood before them like a question mark. Weathered siding, a sagging porch, and windows that had witnessed decades of changing seasons. It wasn't condemned, but it had clearly been unloved for years. It's got good bones, Ella Laner said optimistically, using her cane to push aside weeds growing through cracks in the walkway. Inside, dust motes danced in the afternoon sunlight streaming through dirty windows. The rooms were empty except for a few pieces of basic furniture Ella Laner had arranged to be delivered. It's not much, Sarah admitted, watching her children explore the creaking floors and peeling wallpaper. It's ours, Oliver said with a pragmatism born of loss. We can fix it. That night, after tucking the twins into beds with new sheets that couldn't disguise the age of the mattresses beneath, Sarah sat alone in the kitchen. David's journal lay before her, unopened. She traced the worn leather cover, remembering how he'd carried it everywhere, capturing the world in sketches and observations. Finally, she opened it, her fingers trembling slightly. Among sketches and notes about his art, she found entries about his illness, his parents, and a mysterious grandmother's legacy. One passage made her pause. Sarah is stronger than she knows. She'll face this test and emerge not just intact, but magnificent. I only wish I could be there to see it. What test had he anticipated? And what did he mean about his grandmother's legacy? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. On the porch stood an elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes. Margaret Wilson, she introduced herself. I live 3 houses down. Thought you might need this more than me tonight. She held out a bottle of wine and a casserole dish. That's incredibly kind, but I knew David when he was a boy, Margaret continued, stepping past Sarah into the house with the confidence of someone who had spent decades in classrooms maintaining order. I was his 3rd-grade teacher before I retired. He used to stay after school to draw. Had the most extraordinary eye for color. Sarah felt the first genuine smile in weeks cross her face. Please come in. As they shared the casserole and wine, Margaret filled in the gaps of David's childhood, stories Sarah had never heard from him or his parents. This neighborhood meant something to David, Margaret explained. His grandmother, Elizabeth, lived here before the Harrisons moved to their mansion. He spent summers with her, learning to paint in that very backyard. When Margaret left, Sarah returned to the journal with a new understanding. The grandmother's legacy wasn't just about memories. It was about this place, this neighborhood, these connections the Harrisons had tried to sever. Do you think Sarah should fight the Harrisons for her children's future, or try to find common ground? 3 months into their new life, Sarah discovered that poverty wasn't about not having money, so much as the constant mental math of survival. She could recite the exact cost of groceries at 3 different stores, knew which day the bakery marked down bread, and had memorized the bus schedule. Mornings began at 5:30 a.m., preparing for her classes at Jefferson High School. Afternoons found her cataloging artifacts at the City Museum. Evenings were spent tutoring wealthy students in their homes, sitting at kitchen islands that cost more than her monthly rent. Oliver and Emma adapted, showing a resilience that children shouldn't need to use. They enrolled at Oakwood Elementary, a school with outdated textbooks but dedicated teachers. Oliver appointed himself man of the house, fixing leaky faucets with YouTube tutorials. Emma retreated into her art, filling sketchbooks with drawings that showed a talent inherited from her father. The neighborhood embraced them with unexpected warmth. Gabriel Rodriguez, a contractor who lived 2 doors down, appeared one Saturday with his tools and teenage son, Miguel, to repair the porch steps. "No one's keeping score, Professor," he said when Sarah protested she couldn't pay. "My roof leaked for 2 winters before I could afford to fix it. We take care of each other here." Gabriel had been in Oakwood his entire life, raised by parents who had immigrated from Mexico with nothing but determination. "This neighborhood has a way of teaching you what real wealth looks like," he told Sarah as they worked together repainting her kitchen. "And it isn't the kind you can deposit in a bank." Mrs. Cooper at the corner store extended credit when Sarah's paycheck was delayed. Margaret organized a neighborhood fix-up day before winter, and a dozen people showed up. For the first time in her adult life, Sarah experienced community not as an abstract concept, but as a living, breathing entity that held people together when everything else fell apart. Then came the day that changed everything. Sarah was grading papers at the kitchen table when the doorbell rang. On her porch stood Victoria Harrison, immaculately dressed, her expression revealing nothing. "May I come in?" she asked, though it wasn't really a question. Inside, Victoria surveyed the modest living room with its mismatched furniture and freshly painted walls. "I see you've been settling in. What do you want, Victoria?" "I've been speaking with Principal Turner at Oakwood Elementary," Victoria said, examining a finger for non-existent dust. "Apparently, Emma and Oliver are quite exceptional. Their test scores are remarkably high despite the school's limitations." Sarah tensed. The school has excellent teachers who care about their students. "Nevertheless, Richard and I feel that children deserve better opportunities. Westfield Academy has agreed to offer them full scholarships beginning next semester." "That's very generous," Sarah said carefully. "But the children are happy where they are." Victoria's composure slipped slightly. "Don't be obtuse, Sarah. These opportunities will shape their entire futures. Surely you don't want your pride to limit their potential." Before Sarah could respond, the front door opened, and the twins returned from school with Margaret, who had begun walking them home each day. Victoria's eyes narrowed at the sight of her grandchildren holding hands with the elderly teacher. "Emma, Oliver," she said, her voice softening artificially. "I've missed you terribly." The children froze, looking to Sarah for guidance. "Your grandmother was just leaving," Sarah said firmly. "Actually," Victoria continued, "I came to invite you all to dinner at the estate this Sunday. Your grandfather misses you, and your rooms are just as you left them." Oliver stepped forward, his young face set with a determination that belied his 10 years. "We don't want to come for dinner, grandmother. We like our home here." Victoria's composure faltered, genuine hurt flashing across her features before the polished facade returned. "Darling, surely you can't prefer this situation to the comfort we can provide?" "Dad is what's best for us," Emma said softly, surprising everyone with her directness. "He told me that when he was sick. He said, 'Mom is teaching us important things.'" "Like what, precious?" Victoria's tone was indulgent. "Like how to be brave when things are hard," Emma replied, "and how family sticks together no matter what." Victoria's gaze shifted to Sarah with newfound calculation. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "Our attorneys will be in touch regarding visitation arrangements." After she left, Sarah found her hands trembling. The Harrisons had resources, connections, and a lifetime of getting their way. If they decided to pursue legal action, the battle would be exhausting and expensive, something Sarah simply didn't have. That night, after the children were asleep, Sarah found herself drawn again to David's journal. Among the final entries was a sealed envelope marked simply, "For when you must choose." Inside was a letter in David's handwriting. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, you're facing a difficult decision about our children's future. I know my parents well enough to predict they'll offer something that seems reasonable, practical, advantageous, with strings attached that may not be immediately visible. Here is what I want for Emma and Oliver. I want them to grow up knowing their value isn't determined by their bank account or social connections. I want them to recognize genuine kindness and distinguish it from manipulation. I want them to understand that integrity sometimes requires sacrificing convenience or advantage. Trust yourself, Sarah. You know our children. You know what matters most. Remember what you said to me when my parents offered you that position at the gallery? Some costs don't appear on the balance sheet. You were right then. I suspect you're right now, too. With all my love, David. Sarah folded the letter carefully, her resolve strengthening. Whatever the Harrisons might throw at her, she would face it with the certainty that David had trusted her judgment above all others. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between security and principle? The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon as Sarah was preparing dinner. Mrs. Bennett, this is Catherine Morgan from Westbrook Legal Associates. I represent the Reynolds Trust, and I've been trying to reach you regarding an urgent matter concerning your late husband. Catherine Morgan was younger than Sarah had expected, with an efficient manner that suggested competence. Thank you for coming, Mrs. Bennett. I represent the Reynolds Trust, a private foundation established by your husband's maternal grandmother, Elizabeth Reynolds. Are you familiar with Mrs. Reynolds? David spoke of her often, but she passed away before we met. Catherine nodded. Mrs. Reynolds established the trust in 1985 with explicit instructions regarding its management and distribution. The principle was to remain untouched until certain conditions were met. What conditions? David was named the primary beneficiary, provided he demonstrated a life of purpose and compassion. According to the trustee's evaluation, he met those conditions. The trust, valued at approximately $195 million, was placed under his sole control 3 years ago. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. That's impossible. David never mentioned anything about that kind of money. We lived on my teaching salary. According to our records, Catherine continued, David established the Bennett Foundation immediately after gaining control of the trust. He directed that the funds be used primarily for philanthropic purposes with specific provisions for educational initiatives, community development, and healthcare access for underserved populations. David secretly controlling a fortune, establishing a foundation she'd never heard of, making decisions about millions of dollars without ever mentioning it. Why wouldn't he tell me? That's where matters become more personal, Mrs. Bennett. David left specific instructions regarding disclosure of the foundation and its assets. According to his directives, you were to be informed of its existence exactly 1 year after his death, provided certain conditions were met. What conditions? Separation from the Harrison family's influence, establishment of an independent household, and continued commitment to the values we shared throughout our marriage, particularly regarding the children's upbringing. The realization dawned slowly. David had anticipated everything. He had orchestrated a test, a proving ground for the principles they had built their marriage upon. He knew this would happen, Sarah whispered. He knew his parents would try to take the children. Catherine nodded. Based on my conversations with David, yes, he was concerned that his parents' wealth would influence the children's values if they were raised in the Harrison household. He was equally concerned that you might compromise your principles if offered financial security in exchange for concessions regarding their upbringing. Anger flared briefly in Sarah's chest, but the anger faded, replaced by a deeper understanding of the man she had loved. What happens now? Sarah asked. As the surviving parent and legal guardian of Emma and Oliver, you become the primary trustee of the Bennett Foundation. The magnitude of the responsibility was overwhelming. I don't know anything about running a foundation. The foundation has a professional management team in place. Your role would be oversight and direction. Additionally, there are provisions for your family's financial security. And the Harrisons, do they know about this? The Harrisons are aware of the Reynolds Trust. However, they are not aware of David's specific directives regarding the Bennett Foundation or the timing of your appointment as trustee. As Sarah left the law office, the city streets seemed altered somehow. The weight of David's revelation pressed against her chest. That evening, Richard Harrison's sleek black car appeared outside the house on Oakwood Street. We need to talk, Sarah, he said when she opened the door. About the Reynolds Trust, about the children's future, about how we move forward from here. Sarah thought of David's letter, of the community that had embraced them, of Emma and Oliver's resilience. With a steadying breath, she invited Richard inside. Victoria and Richard Harrison sat stiffly on Sarah's living room sofa. We've had our attorneys review the Reynolds Trust documents, Richard began. It appears David made his wishes quite clear. Yes, he did, Sarah agreed. Nevertheless, Victoria interjected. We believe a compromise would benefit everyone. We propose that the Bennett Foundation remains under your trusteeship as David intended. In exchange, Emma and Oliver attend Westfield Academy, funded by the foundation, not by us, while continuing to live with you. The offer was reasonable, yet something in Victoria's tone raised her suspicions. And if I decline? Then we would be forced to proceed with a formal petition for grandparent visitation rights. I need to discuss this with Emma and Oliver, Sarah said. Victoria's eyebrows rose slightly. They're children, Sarah. They're not equipped to make decisions of this magnitude. They're people, Sarah replied firmly. People whose lives were upended when they lost their father. To Sarah's surprise, Victoria's composure suddenly cracked. I don't know how to reach them, Victoria admitted. I don't know how to be a grandmother instead of a director on a board. I miss him so much, Sarah. The children are all we have left of David. The raw honesty of the admission stunned Sarah into silence. In that moment, the storm within them mirrored the storm outside, and the path to healing began to glimmer on the horizon. Have you ever felt the weight of unspoken words, the ache of vulnerabilities hidden beneath a polished surface? Victoria had lived a life of measured affection, of appearances meticulously maintained. But beneath it all lay a heart longing for connection, unsure how to love without control. Then Sarah came along, offering a glimpse of another way. Weeks later, Sarah found herself amidst the glittering elite, an unexpected guest at the Harrison Foundation Gala. The invitation, an olive branch after their difficult conversation, left her questioning if she was betraying David's principles. You look lovely tonight, Richard said, his voice a shade warmer than usual. Their children, Emma and Oliver, were thriving. But Sarah held firm. They would remain at Oakwood Elementary, with their friends and their roots. Richard paused, a flicker of regret in his eyes. Perhaps I was too quick to assume wealth was everything, he confessed, a father grappling with the legacy he'd hoped to leave. Then Victoria appeared, an unfamiliar hesitation in her step. There's something I want to show you, she whispered. The Harrison Library had transformed into a gallery, a testament to David's hidden passion. Dozens of his works adorned the walls, a lifelong journey etched in color and form. Sarah felt a wave of emotion, familiar pieces mingling with undiscovered treasures. They stopped before David's final masterpiece, a triptych titled Legacy. 3 panels, each revealing a different home, the Harrison estate, grand and formal, their humble abode on Maple Avenue, and finally, a modest house nestled in a vibrant community garden. He painted this weeks before he passed, Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. Different versions of home, different kinds of legacy. It's Oakwood Street, Sarah breathed, recognizing the familiar scene. He saw it before it existed. Victoria's voice trembled. He envisioned the home you would create together, even when he knew he wouldn't be there to share it. A scholarship was established in David's name, a bridge built between 2 families. 2 years later, the Bennett's backyard bloomed with life, a testament to the love and community they had cultivated. The David Bennett Community Arts Center, a beacon of creativity and connection, stood proudly nearby. Catherine Morgan approached Sarah, a rare smile gracing her face. David would be proud, she said softly, not just of the center, but of the family you've nurtured. Sarah smiled, watching the Harrisons mingling with their neighbors. We're still figuring it out, she admitted. But we found a way to give Emma and Oliver the best of both worlds. As the evening unfolded, Emma and Oliver gathered with Sarah on the porch steps. Do you think Dad knew we'd end up here? Emma asked, her voice filled with wonder. Sarah considered David's final painting, the vision he had carried in his heart. I think he hoped we would find our way to something like this, she replied. A home built on love, a community based on connection, a life rich in meaning and purpose. Oliver, ever practical, considered this thoughtfully. So the money was just to make sure we could choose our own path? Exactly, Sarah smiled. Your father understood that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the quality of our connections, the depth of our experiences, and the impact of our choices. Together, they had discovered the legacy David had left behind, a legacy of love, courage, and purpose that transcended all material possessions. And sometimes, our greatest losses open pathways to treasures we never knew existed. Have you experienced something similar in your life?